Welcome to the Tilted Halo, the place for women of faith and leadership who know that we're not perfect, yet boldly lead anyway. Whether you serve in ministry, business, or life, this show is here to encourage you, remind you that you're not alone, and help you lead with confidence, gratitude, and God's grace. Now, let's get started. Welcome to all of you today to another episode of The Tilted Halo, and I am so delighted to have as my guest today Annie Yatch. Annie is the Chief Transformation Officer at North Star Leadership, helping high-achieving entrepreneurs and executives break through subconscious patterns, limit their leadership potential and financial success. With over 15 years of experience guiding leaders through transformative change, combines elite performance strategies with deep neurological and emotional intelligence work to fast-track personal and professional breakthroughs. From an intelligence analyst working in counterterrorism to faith-driven business coach for rapidly scaling entrepreneurs, Annie helps you break through revenue and mindset ceilings you don't even know you had. Annie's unique methodology connects the dots between unresolved trauma, leadership performance, and business growth. By identifying blind spots in the subconscious and rewiring pathways, she helps clients achieve remarkable results in their business and their lives. Annie, welcome to the Tilted Halo.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. I'm thrilled for this conversation.
I got to start with that part in your bio about counterterrorism. Please tell us more about your story.
Sure. Well, I never thought that I would go into international security counterterrorism, but after 9/11, going to school at Georgetown University in DC, it just became apparent to me that we needed to do more. And so I started going down the pathway of how could I learn more about the world? How could I impact at a greater level? And at the time I had this really incredible mentor who was a professor of mine, who was also one of the top attorneys for CIA. And so she really inspired me, and her mentorship made me want to do more. But I found out really quickly that I'm not good at lying. I'm not good at manipulating facts. I'm like, this face can't lie. So I realized from some great conversations with people around me that I would be better suited in helping people grow and develop their careers, helping people to, change the way they think about themselves. And so instead of going down the path of maybe being a spy, I decided to go down the path of what I'd love to do instead is I would love to help people change the way they think about themselves so they can create more beautiful results in the world.
But I get the feeling that all of the stuff you learned in that path towards being a spy, some of the techniques and information that you learned, is now helping you help others transform their lives in very positive ways.
Well, I think what I loved doing was always watching people and observing people and watching for, what does that little tick in their face mean? Or what does this little body language thing mean? And so I think that was a good foundation. But honestly, I learned a lot more from working with some of the elite level warriors from the SEALs that I worked with just out of that experience.
Oh, wow.
And so I was just fascinated by, these guys that are doing these elite missions, impossible things. How are they doing it? How are they staying sane? How are they rallying everybody? And how are they actually accomplishing things that 99.9% of the world couldn't do? So I like spending a lot of time sort of backwards engineering, well, what makes these guys the most elite? And how can I bring that knowledge to normal people so we could just all enjoy more of that?
Wow. So what's one of the things that you learned that you bring to people from that?
So what I've noticed in the world is that everyone's wondering, what is my purpose? Why am I here? And when I looked at the SEAL teams and some of the people that I worked with there, I was like, if you listen to how the SEALs plan for special operations missions, they are very focused on what is the emotional feeling that we all want to create at the end of this experience. And so I learned really quickly that, well, you wouldn't think the SEALs would ever think about the emotional state. The emotional state is what drives everybody to accomplish the most difficult things. And so I worked through a process that I take into companies and for entrepreneurs to help them get very attached to their purpose by focusing on that future emotional state that would make them feel the most successful. And that becomes a filter for how they make decisions in their lives. So very cool stuff.
My hunch is that the more powerful emotional states are positive ones, not
Yes.
the fear, not the I gotta get you type of things. It's very positive ones. Is that
It's more
correct?
the joy. Yep, it's more the joy. It's more the relief. Like if you think about planning for a mission, you're like, well, I want the joy of knowing that my best friend survived. I want the relief of knowing I'm going home to my family. You know, those types of feelings are so big that they will change the actions and change the behavior of the people who are planning strategy. So if you
Wow.
can start with that in business instead, you know, we all talk about objectives and goals and targets and all these things that really don't have much emotional resonance with people unless you're money focused. So
Yeah.
instead, we talk to teams about what is this deep emotional feeling from your why that you want to create moving forward, that you want to feel every day, and then how do you tie the vision of the company to that feeling?
And even those who are more money focused, does that really fill them enough to get to the place where they really want to be?
Honestly, there's always more, right? So if we think it's a money motivation, it really isn't. That's just the external face of what it looks like. But anytime someone's telling me, oh, I'm very money motivated, I'm like, I could ask you why 3 more times and we get even deeper into why is money so important to you and where does that come from? And it almost always goes back to something much deeper than money.
Wow. I think that's really important for all of us to think about and learn these days. And as I think about women in particular these days, I see so many women struggling who are in leadership positions, and loneliness is one of the big things. What do you see as the primary struggles, especially for women, since the show is primarily aimed at?
So I could probably tell you the top 3 things I feel really weigh women down that women really struggle with. The first one I would tell you is, you know, we're in a very masculinized world. So as women, we think in order to be successful, we have to become more masculine. And so we do. We repress our emotions, we buckle down, we get the job done, we hustle, we grind. When we do that, we lose the energy that comes from this beautiful feminine part of ourselves. And so the more we repress that side, actually the least, well, like the least we're able to do some of these bigger, beautiful things that could really contribute in our business life. So that's the first thing I would say that many women are suffering from. And then I think we're suffering from the fact that, you know, we keep being told that we can do it all. And I think that is very overwhelming for us as women because it's like, well, I'm going to take this on, I'm going to take that on. I'm probably the best person to do this. Nobody else can do this. So we become not great at delegating. I think that for us is a very hard skill to learn when we've been conditioned by society that we need to be doing more because we can have everything we want. I'm not saying women can't have what we want, but I think we have to be strategic and disciplined, and we have to be open to what that actually looks like. It's not about doing a ton of more, you know, ton more things. It's sometimes just about being who we are in the world and allowing beautiful things to come to us because we know who we are and we're very aligned. So I would say those are the 2 biggest places I've watched women struggle, and also as mothers. I mean, it's very difficult to be a mother as well as to be the head of the household, as well as to be, you know, creating great results and leading a team. There's so much there that requires us to constantly pivot. By the end of most days, I think a lot of women are just like, I have nothing left. And sometimes you walk into your family and you don't have anything left. And this could also happen for men. But I think we as women, we burn ourselves out by doing too many things.
And there's so much that pulls our attention one way and the other these days, which is some of what you're talking about. I mean, we've got the news, we've got social media, but in addition to the work stuff, there's so many distractions, even at work,
Yes.
that filtering through all of those to be able to focus on what's really critical and important can be very tough some days.
I think it is very tough. I think there are so many inputs into our system, right? And whenever we get too many inputs, our nervous system gets overloaded. When the nervous system gets overloaded, we can't make clear decisions. We go into burnout and overwhelm, and we can't really put our needs first. So I think that, you know, one of the first things I do with a lot of women that I coach is I say, tell me all the inputs right now so we can figure out what inputs we can let go of that are not necessary. And we can figure out the ones that really fill you up or light you up. Because as women, we say yes to way too many things. and we receive way too many things. And it's up to us to figure out what is really essential here and what really gives us that emotional deposit that makes us feel good, so we act from that place rather from depletion.
Yeah, and that all of the distractions get in the way of being able to make good decisions and to even know what our purpose is and to be able to follow that.
So many of us are distracted by just the world, and when there are so many distractions, so many inputs, we don't necessarily set aside the time to go deep into, well, what is our purpose? Why are we here? Until sometimes there's a requirement for that because we have to reinvent ourselves completely due to a life situation that comes up. And then it's like, well, we've got to earn this. We got to go after this reinvention for ourselves, because if we don't and we stay the same, we know what that feels like. That leads to burnout, that leads to the over.
Yeah. When you talk about reinvention, what does that really mean to most women these days?
Well, I think it can mean a lot of different things, but when I talk about reinvention, I like to say if you're not exhilarated by things going on in your life, you have to look at those different areas of your life and decide what you need to reinvent for yourself. So whether it's, you're going through a transition in your career, transition in your marriage, transition with your kids, what is not working for you? Because the longer we as women sit in the things that aren't working for us, the longer we suffer and the less likely it is that we're on purpose in our lives. And my greatest joy is helping women identify that purpose, because we're okay reinventing. We're okay looking at our lives and be like, this really hasn't been working for a couple of years and I deserve more, I deserve better, I want to go out and get those things. But it's hard sometimes to reinvent when the world wants you to stay the same. And your friends want you to stay the same, and your family wants you to stay the same. So it takes a little bit of gumption, I think, to go after reinvention.
And some days it takes a lot of gumption, and and the willingness to let go of the result, which can be really tough because you don't know all of what you might be letting go of.
And it's an onion. You just keep revealing more and more of things that you get to let go of, and things you get to say no to, and things that light you up, and then things that don't light you up. I mean, it is a shedding process, for sure.
Yeah, and sometimes it really significantly impacts our significant relationships.
It does. Our intimate relationships are massively impacted by how we choose to reinvent. And also, our intimate relationships are the key to most of our business success. We have stability in those intimate relationships and we feel very supported, our business growth and trajectory is very different than if we don't.
But yet, when we don't have that success or that support from family or the intimate relationships, that can sometimes be brought to reality through part of the growth process. Do you find that happens?
Yes. Well, I think that when we're in an intimate relationship that doesn't support us, and we know it doesn't, then we go external to seek purpose and to seek validation and to seek fulfillment. And really, I think the journey we're all on is figuring out how do we go within to receive everything we need. And so I think that, I don't know if you've heard this myth, but there's a myth around eagles that when the eagle hits 40, the eagle, literally its beak is sort of brittle, its talons are not as sharp as they used to be. Feathers are falling out, and the eagle decides that it's going to fly to the highest mountain. It's going to smash its beak on a rock, pull the beak off, so a new beak can be reformed, and the talons can be pulled off so that there can be new, sharper talons, and then that eagle is able to fly for the next 30 years. So I think of us as women as we reach a point when we realize the things that we've been using, the thoughts we've been having, the belief systems or structures that we've been holding on to so tightly are no longer serving us. Hit that ceiling, and then we have no choice but to reinvent. We have to do it if we want to soar for the next 30 years. But that reinvention process is where we sometimes have to give up almost everything that we've thought of before. Because, there's just so much that in the first 40 years of our lives, we didn't really understand about ourselves that we do now.
Yeah, and there's so much cultural input that we as women carry. And I mean, that's true for men too, the cultural input for each of us. But it's, I don't know, maybe because I'm a woman, it seems like there's more as a woman that we tend to carry as, it can become real baggage about the shoulds, how a woman should behave, what a woman should do or should not do, and we should upon ourselves
All the time.
And society shoulds on us as well. And
For sure.
family can do that at times too. So, and you talk about examining those beliefs. To me, that's so key, the beliefs that we carry. How do you help people uncover some of those deeper beliefs that we just assume are, and maybe not even consciously aware of, are there?
Yeah. Well, the way I go about it is usually in the first session with someone, I will ask a bunch of questions about their lowest point of their life and the highest point of their life. Because there is always a pattern between the lowest point and what we believed about ourselves then, and our highest point and what we believed about ourselves in that moment. And what I start to find is there's a core connection there that if we know what it is, it gets us closer to our purpose. It helps us identify this subconscious block in our own mind that's been holding us back. And it helps us to move forward with a very clear action plan on what gets us to the peak versus what keeps us at the low point. Because people go in a cycle their whole life. They'll be in a low point, or they'll be in a low point, then a high point, low point, high point. And once you can see the context and the patterns that are in that cycle, you don't have to stay there anymore. And that's a piece of freedom that I like to give people.
Oh, wow. That sounds really interesting and powerful way to help people uncover some of those beliefs. I've done some work with an organization that helps people uncover beliefs too, but it's a slightly different process and things like that. So there's more than one way to do it, but
Always.
that works good for you. For women of faith in leadership, are there any additional challenges that you see that we as women of faith, whatever the faith may be, might, any hurdles that can sometimes put in our way?
Well, I think sometimes, people think that when you're a woman of faith that you might be very strict or rigid in some of your ideals. And I think that the more we can look at the basic ideal of compassion and unconditional love with others. There was a great book I read one time called The Power by Rhonda Byrne. What I loved about this book was, for a woman of faith, the whole concept was that we are putting out into the world action and behavior that comes from an unconditional loving place. Because the more of that you pour into people, the more of that you pour into the world, the more unattached you are to the outcome, and the more you're just fully embodying this love concept, the more the world will respond to that. And so I think for many women of faith, we pull on our love and connection to God, our love and connection to spirit, our love and connection to the universe, depending on, what people believe. But I think that is the thing that syncs us up to our greater purpose. And for a lot of people, they wonder, is this real? Is what you're experiencing and what you see as me as a faith-driven leader, is that real or is that fake? Are you really that happy? Are you really that engaged? Do you really care that much? I always have people say, they're like, you should really tell people you're really this nice. And I'm like, well, I am this nice. And they're like, right, but like in the world, we don't see that all the time.
Right.
And so people can doubt the reality of who you are. You're a faith-driven leader.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a new book out that you probably will love too. It's called Pure Unlimited Love by Stephen G. Post. It's just, as we're recording this, it's just been released. And I recommend that to you and to anybody. I've started reading it and met the author recently. He's written a number of other books, but this is a new one for him.
Well, I can't wait to.
Yeah, and it's very similar to what you're talking about, but talking about love and kindness and different things. He has a wheel of 7 attributes that are part of pure love and part of love. So it's got a lot to it.
We all need more of that. We all need more of that. We all need to be seen more, heard more, understood more. We have to have more compassion for ourselves.
Right, right. Right. So you're seeing more advantages for women with faith in their leadership and how they perceive the world, perhaps? Would that be accurate?
That there's an advantage, I think, when it comes to the energy that you're able to bring into the world, because it's not my energy, right? It's like energy that comes through me and works through me from the connection I have with God. And so for me, I always think, like, people are always commenting on the boundless energy I have. I'm like, well, that's because I think I'm synced up, right? And when you have that sync up, it's a lot easier, because I wake up every morning and I just say, please, God, pour love and light and kindness through my being help illuminate me in some way that will help me contribute positively to others' lives, please use me as a vessel for your loving kindness. Because I feel that when you're looking at reinvention or you're looking at helping somebody work through a massive
Right.
subconscious belief system that doesn't serve them, you have to meet it with love and with kindness, and you have to pour love into that experience, because when you pour love, anything that is not love will leave. And so I think when you have this connection to something greater than you, it allows you to bring more than just you into your leadership, which has
Yeah.
been a beautiful experience in my life.
Yeah. Going back to the book I just mentioned, Stephen Post the part I just read talks about, you know, people who we might see as adversaries. He doesn't see he has an adversary, but that anytime there is a situation like that, that person or that situation helps us filter out things and grow. So
Yes.
instead of seeing someone or a situation as an adversary, we can reframe that, which is a popular term, but to see it in a more loving way as an opportunity for us to see and grow deeper and to grow bigger in a sense.
I think that's very true. I think if we spent more time looking at the people we consider to be adversaries, and one of the things I talk a lot on is the fact that most of us in business, we think we're running the show as adults, but it's really that little 7-year-old in our minds from the time when we came up with a lot of our belief systems and our thoughts and our behaviors. It's really that 7-year-old that's driving the bus. And if we can look at our adversaries and realize there's another 7-year-old driving that bus over there that has triggers, thoughts, and issues, and if we can like try to connect more as that 7-year-old with them and allow that to have some more compassion and connection rather than adversarial experience, it really does change the game. I mean, I've been through divorce, and when you go through divorce, you have to find a way to work with your co-parent, whether they're the best co-parent in the world or the worst. And I've spent a lot of time in forgiveness of self and forgiveness of, actions either one of us took. And what I find is the more I think of him as like this little 7-year-old kid that's still trying to figure it out, that still needs compassion, love, and support, that's the easiest place for me to meet him at. So
Yeah.
I think you're dead on.
Instead of saying, well, you're acting childish, which would be a
Right?
very negative way of looking at someone as a 7-year-old, but
Yeah.
remembering that, each of us has the needs as a 7-year-old to be loved and cared about too.
And
Yeah.
to be seen and to be
And
heard,
to be
even
seen
in
and heard.
conflict with couples, when I coach couples, I'm always like, remember that it's not the two adult versions of you that are in conflict. It's usually
Mhm.
that little kid inside both of you that feels like he's not being heard or she's not being heard. We've got to bring those two little kids together to work as a team. And you have to bring
Mhm.
the little kid inside of you together to work with you as a team. Otherwise, it's a lot more
Yeah.
difficult to go after.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just a different way of framing that. That's less divisive. I mean, there's so much in our world these days is us against them, me against you, and it's got to, all of that kind of stuff, which doesn't get us anywhere.
Never does.
So
That's true.
it destroys the possibilities of growth. It destroys the possibilities of teamwork, and it limits and inhibits our own growth
I
in the whole
agree.
process.
One of the things I always ask people to do is I'll say, look at your life and look for any place in your life where there is suffering. Because wherever there is suffering, there's a story that you're telling yourself. Typically, it's that little 7-year-old telling you a story that isn't true. And if you can figure out what story isn't true, then you can start to reframe or you can start to unravel that story in your mind and create a new story, which is going to serve you better.
Yeah.
So I think that's sort of important for people that are listening that might be wondering, well, what is my thing or what's holding me back? Look for where you're suffering and the story
Yeah.
behind it.
And that's interesting because I have people who sometimes say, well, I remember this exactly the way it happened. And I'm thinking, none of us remember things exactly the way they happen because we're all filtering things in memory as far as what happened along the way. So, we're all interpreting as we go. So, how do you help people with something like that? This is my memory.
Yeah.
And this is, to me, a memory is how I believe and see the situation now rather than
Yes.
necessarily how it actually occurred. Would that be an accurate way you understand some of that?
Well, sometimes when people have a memory that really was problematic for them, when I talk to them about it, I want to ask, what did you learn from this experience? Because there's always an emotional charge to whatever
Yeah.
the memory is. And for what I've noticed in most people that I've coached is that the emotional charge of the memory is what holds them back more so than the actual memory itself. So I do a lot of work with people where I will help them clear out the emotional charge of that memory so
Okay.
that they no longer have that huge emotional reaction, right? Because if we can manage our own reaction, then we feel more neutral, we can make more clear decisions. And it can be something so small, right? It could be something your dad said to you on his deathbed that you literally hold on to every single day, and it makes you decide to do business completely differently. It could be something that your mom said to you when you were 5 years old that made you realize, oh my gosh, if I get close to someone, they're going to be taken away. I mean, so many small things that
Yeah.
have so much relevance because, of all the thousand things people say to you, you pick this one thing. So there's always a reason for it. And it's almost always linked to
Yeah.
the lesson you're here to teach humanity, which I think is
Yeah.
pretty beautiful.
Yeah, that a mentor of mine once said, "You're never too old to have a happy childhood."
That is accurate.
Yeah, and first time I heard that, I said, "That's nuts." Yeah, because
What does that mean?
childhood happened a long time ago. But it's what you said. You know, we go back and we look at really what happened there. What was I thinking? What was I feeling? And how can we see that perhaps differently? And the
Or even
emotion that
what
was,
did I learn, right?
yeah. And what did I learn from that? Yeah.
Because I don't always like people to have to go back through all the emotional distress of the situation, but I will ask people to tell me, what did you learn from this? Because everything goes back to the lesson. And if the lesson is something negative, it's also because the brain hasn't allowed the lesson to include anything positive. So then just by even introducing the concept that in this there could be a duality, do you see the duality or do you see any potential for it? That even opens up a whole different part of the brain.
Right. Right. Right.
So I
And
love that.
yeah, and sometimes it takes a little while for that to sink in and open up another possibility within us as we go. And so this is what you talk about when working through traumas and how that impacts our business. How do those fit, yes, we're the 7-year-old and everything else, but how does that impact decision making? How does that impact finances? Those kinds of things that you see that hold
So
women, other people back.
Well, just to be clear, nobody likes to hear that they have trauma. And so what I always say is it's not necessarily the word trauma because people will always compare, well, I had nothing wrong with my childhood and I didn't go to war, or I didn't have a death of a child. What I tell people is it's not trauma, it's a perceived loss of control. So if you look at your life, you're like, where did I have a perceived loss of control? If you can look at that, that helps you better understand, well, what's going to impact the way I make decisions? So for example, if you were a little kid, and I'm just going to use a couple of client examples because it makes it more real. If you were a little kid who your mom put you on an airplane and sent you to your dad in America when you were 5, you get on that airplane and you think, oh my gosh, nobody exists but me in this airplane. Everybody else around me has gone. You get very focused on, I have to make the most of this moment because this is all I know. I have to be very present all the time. So the entrepreneur I was working with, he had never planned for anything in his life because he was so in the present moment all the time. Now, in business, if you can't plan, how do you set 5-year goals? How do you set 10-year
Right.
goals?
Right.
So he had to learn how to plan with this block that was going on in his mind. Now, the cool thing about this was once he learned how to get rid of this block, his business went from making $2 million to $5 million within a 2-year time frame, which was very quick. And so that's an example. And for women in business, it could be that they grew up with a mother that was hypercritical of them. And so they are more critical of themselves in decision making. They get stuck in analysis paralysis and they don't make decisions fast enough. And then they get passed over for things. So we always look back to that sort of younger childhood time window. And we look for what were these big emotional experiences you had? Because if we can release the emotional charge of that experience, the person can make decisions differently. And that impacts every area of their life, not just business.
Wow. Wow. Those are two powerful concepts and ideas with that. So if there's one major takeaway that you want people to have right now, especially women
Yes.
and women of faith in positions of leadership, what would you most want them to know, to do, to take away from all of this?
The most important thing I would have any woman, specifically a woman of faith, consider moving forward is the fact that the biggest ROI in your entire life is your ability to understand yourself. And the best investment that you will ever make is in learning more about you, what you need, what you want. Because if you don't know those things, then you can never step into your purpose, and you really can't do what you're here to do from God's perspective or from your own perspective. So I think invest in yourself would be the biggest request I would have of women. Do not be afraid to invest the time, the energy, the effort, and the money. Nothing is more important than that investment in yourself.
And, as you say that, I hear so many women, I've asked at times, well, what do you want to do? I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea. And the idea of investing in yourself to many women sounds exceedingly selfish. And so how do you help women understand the difference between caring for self and being selfish?
Well, one of my good friends and I had this conversation. We like to call it self-with instead of selfish, because what you start to realize as you get, I would say, past 40, and I would love more earlier women, like early age women, to have this conversation sooner, but many of us don't. But I think after 40, you start to realize that the self-sacrifices that you've been making for a majority of your life for other people, for other motivators, for other goals, for other companies, none of that came back to you in the way you wanted. And I think that in life, there has to be like a tennis match, so to speak. You have to hit the ball, and then you have to receive the ball. So you can't just give and self-sacrifice and self-sacrifice. You have to give and receive, give and receive. And I think as women, many of us don't get good at that until we get over 40. And I think the more we realize that every piece of like love or gift we put into our emotional bank account for ourselves turns around and gives us 10 times if we invest in that amount. And so one of the biggest things I say to women as I'm working with them, and I'm like, you've been doing it one way for a long time. If you could have figured it out because you are a genius, because all women are geniuses in different ways.
Sure.
If you could have figured this out by yourself, you would have. But as women, we don't have the time to siphon through 11 million data points of our subconscious. And we don't have a lot of time to waste having the same conversation over and over again about, well, I feel like nobody else can do it the way I can do it. I have to do all these things. If you're stuck in thinking that about yourself or what you're stuck in right now, the only thing holding you back from a completely different life is your own way of thinking about yourself. So spending that time to be with yourself is the only thing that truly, like, exponentially changes the trajectory of your world. So that's the hard conversation to have, because many women will come to me and they'll say, Annie, this seems like a lot of work. I don't know if I can do this. I feel like it's going to take a lot of time. And I'm like, what other choice do you have? In this world, you cannot get to where you want to go if you don't do this work to understand yourself. That's the journey of this experience, I think, on Earth, is how quickly can we understand ourselves and our purpose and our alignment with something greater so we can be more that we want to be.
Yeah. And there is more for every woman. And
Always.
that's part of the beautiful gift from God. That
Yes.
we don't have to stay stuck in
We
a
don't.
place in life. And God has gifted, like you said, each and every single one of us with great imagination, great creativity, great skills. They're different, and that's beautiful. That's part of the beauty and purpose of God, that we're not all the same. So for women to understand, yes, you can be more. Yes, life can be more. And that is a gift from God to you, and your
agree.
gift to the world as well. And so to receive it as a gift. A lot of women aren't so good at receiving.
No, we are not. We have to learn this. It's sort of been
Yeah.
conditioned out of us, I think, because in the professional spirit, it's about what you contribute, how much you do, right? And as women, if we just could get more connected to our ability to receive from others and ask for more help on certain things, it's incredible what we can do.
Yeah. We've done a talk about, the old saying, it's more blessed to give than to receive, which is in Scripture. But until we also learn to receive, we don't have as much to give.
We don't. You can't give from an empty cup.
Right. Right. I liken it to playing on a teeter-totter. You can't just be on one end of that teeter-totter or you're stuck on the ground. Seesaw, teeter-totter, whichever name you have for it. Teeter-totter doesn't go very far if you're only on one end. There's nothing on
And
the other side.
that's right. That's right. You need a partner. You need a team. Everything in life is based on how well you can team.
And part of that team is receiving as well as giving. And
I
so
love it.
there's so much more we could talk about, Annie. And I'm looking forward to hoping that we have another conversation somewhere down the road to do some of that.
I would love that.
Yeah. So for everybody, Annie, is there anything, any way that you want people to get in touch with you? Anything that you offer to people at this point in time? Please share that.
Of course. So you can always get in touch with me by reaching out on Instagram, northstarleadership.annie. I answer all my own requests specifically, so you will be interacting with me personally. The other piece of it I would say is for all the women who are listening, there was a great book by Tasha Silver called Change Me Prayers. And that has been one of the best books I've read to rewire some of the subconscious thinking that isn't serving you. So if you're looking for something like that to really change the way you think, that would be a recommendation. And then lastly, as women, please keep investing in yourselves and keep learning more and keep getting excited about all the changes that are happening in your life because they're happening for you to learn and grow. And as Kathleen has shared, the best part of life is going through these beautiful reinventions because that's how you learn even more about yourself and love yourself more and can contribute more to the world.
So to all of you out there watching, listening, God's peace and God's blessing. Come back for another show. If you like this one, please like it, share it with other people so they can hear Annie and they can hear other shows that are on in this podcast. So take care, God's blessings, and see you all next time. You've been listening to The Tilted Halo for women of faith who know we're not perfect, yet boldly lead anyway. If today's episode encouraged you, please like it, share it, and leave a comment. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss what's next. And for more tools, resources, and encouragement, visit me at KathleenAPanning.com. Until next time, keep leading boldly with faith, gratitude, and God's grace.